Hello, hi everyone, Anna here from Cycling UK, and I think we've got a pretty big one today. It's a topic that affects many people and not just women actually. So guys, if you're tuning in, hello, welcome. Everyone is welcome to this chat as always. It's part of Bants, Bikes and Being Female, a series that we set up to try and provide women who are just getting started with cycling all the information they need about starting cycling. However, it's been so popular, it's evolved and it's gone on a little bit longer as we go into deeper and more thorough topics. And this week, as I said, we're covering something that's important to very many people. And we're talking about cycling and mental health, or just health, as I like to call it, because to be fair, the body and the mind and the mind and the body, they are connected. The never ending circle. It's the circle of life. So we really do encourage you to get involved in the comments as well, to the audience. If you've seen any of these before, you'll see that we do try and answer your questions, or even if you've just got something really cool that you want to say, we try and bring that up as well. It's a two-way thing, or a 3 or 4 or 5-way thing, depending on how many people are getting involved. So please do, if you're watching today, say hi in the comments. So talking about cycling and mental health, we've got some brilliant panelists today who are also being very brave about talking about this, because it's not the most of the taboo topics that we do cover and that we have covered, because thankfully mental health is becoming pushed further and further up the agenda, and it's becoming more normalized. I think people do talk about it more. However, it's still not always the easiest topic to talk about, especially if you're somebody who's feeling like you're struggling and you're in it on your own. So thank you to our guests today, and let's welcome them onto the screen. Oh no, wait, no, we're not welcoming them onto the screen just yet, because I do want to say, you might notice that in the corner there, we've got a new little logo. It's because we're just getting started tomorrow with the Women's Festival of Cycling. So this is 3 whole weeks of digital events. They're all digital because of COVID, digital events dedicated to women and cycling. And it's jam-packed. It's literally, we're calculating it today, and it is rammed with 3 weeks of events, stuff about how to fix a puncture, yoga and cycling, and loads more. So please do go and check it out on our Facebook page and on our website, and make sure you get involved. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. And now back to what we're actually doing today, which is talking about cycling and mental health and getting our wonderful panelists on with us. So I'm going to start with inviting Sarah Strong on, because she's done some of these things before. So Sarah, hello.
Hi there.
So thanks for joining us. Can I just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, about cycling, and maybe some of the stuff that you've done before about cycling and mental health?
Yeah, I got into cycling coming up about 20 years ago now, and it was during a recovery phase from severe period of depression. I entered sort of through mountain biking and volunteering, in fact, but then with a really sort of warm environment, got sucked into riding and racing, and expanded it into different types of cycling: road, BMX, cross, track, and it's become very much my life. I've been working in mental health for sort of the last 6 years. And it sort of brought both of those sort of things together. But my work in mental health is very much from a lived experience perspective, and drawing on my own experience of depression over the last 25 years or so, on and off, and pretty much a lifetime's worth of anxiety. And with cycling mental health, I started sort of Bikes and Brains about 3 years ago now, with an evening at Look Mum No Hands. And it was just to start those kind of conversations, speaking about it openly, hopefully encouraging other people to do the same, share their experiences and their love for the bike and how it's helped them. But also, when sometimes the bike can exacerbate sort of mental health issues, or if you don't sort of take proper notice of them, that they can sort of interact in a really sort of discouraging way sometimes. So all those sort of realistic conversations, but also how we can rely on it to keep both mind and body well. And I've certainly been finding that over the last few months with lockdown.
Brilliant, thank you. And as we're saying hello to you, Sarah, just saying hello to some of our audience as well. We've got Therese, hi, Janet, hi, Claire, hi, Serhi, sorry if I said your name wrong, hi. Are you from Cycling Ukraine, cool, and Freya. So we've got loads of people joining in. And next up onto the screen, we've got Crystal Nunn.
Hey,
Hey, Crystal. Again, thanks for joining us.
no
I
worries.
discovered you got spotted in the Velo Vixen Women's Cycling Chat as you talked very openly about some of your struggles with cycling and with mental health. So thank you for making yourself visible there. And tell us a little bit more about you as well.
Yeah, so I've been cycling like since I was a kid, and I've loved it ever since then. It's only when I kind of moved to London that I really kind of dived in a bit more, because obviously the one thing I love about bikes is it's just the perfect machine to go explore on. It kind of opens up areas where it would usually be kind of blocked off on foot. But I really got into the cycling scene in around 2017 when I bought my first new road bike. And it was shortly after that which kind of started this journey with cycling anxiety, when I was involved in a hit and run on the way back from work one day. So it was mainly that event that I've tried to kind of challenge that every day to try and get back on the bike, because that's the one thing that's kind of just held me back from reaching my full cycling potential at the moment. So
Cool, well done you. Well done for pushing along with that challenge and for talking about it today and at other times as well. More people saying hello. This is, yeah, I thought we'd get a lot of people tuning in today. Like I say, this is a topic that will affect most people at least one time in their lives, if not more ongoing. So hi Jane, hi Peter, Jamie and Dawn. Thank you from Newport, Shropshire CC. And we've got some fit mums and friends in Yorkshire from Samantha. Rebecca, why don't we get you on this screen? We've had you on here before. When we interviewed before, but we've got you on in a slightly different capacity today. So what are you going to be bringing to the panel today?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me, everyone, onto the panel. For anyone that wasn't watching the other day when I had a really lovely chat with you, Anna, I've been cycling my whole life, and I literally got on a race bike when I was about 7 years old. So it's all I've ever known, really, when it comes to cycling. But I now work as a broadcaster and a journalist, and something that I know I've spoken to Sarah about in the past is the fact that we do have a tendency sometimes as journalists to cover features where we say, well, cycling cured my depression, or, you know, I lost 8 stone through cycling and now I'm perfectly happy and I'm slim and everything's fixed. And it was something that I felt was quite important to bring to the panel and talk about today, that, you know, I'm sure our other brilliant panelists can shed more light on this than I can myself, but we've got to be careful that we don't portray this as one quick fix. You get on a bike and everything else goes away, because there's so many facets to that, especially, which I know we'll touch upon later. If you perhaps have that avenue removed, perhaps you can't ride your bike for some reason, and then it can become tremendously difficult. So for me, it's always important to follow up with people that I've interviewed, see how those case studies are getting on, and actually not just see this as something that's just here 1 minute and gone the next.
Brilliant, thank you. And more comments coming in. Jazz has messaged saying, wait a minute, is this all lady stuff? Well, no, not specifically, because we're talking about cycling and mental health, which affects everybody. However, all our panelists today are females, because it's part of a series, Bike, Bants and Being Female. And it's also heading into the Women's Festival of Cycling. And the objective is to reduce that gender gap within cycling, because there is no need for it. There's lots of perceived barriers which affect women in a way that don't affect men. So that's the goal with Cycling UK and this particular series. But that doesn't mean, and we're going to go on to this later on as well, that blokes, guys aren't welcome and shouldn't be getting anything out of this panel. I think this one particularly is welcome to everyone. I mean, we did do a panel all about periods. That probably wasn't so much one for the guys, but this one definitely for everybody. And talking about everybody, big hi to Pride Out. So we've been supporting them with Cycling UK. Really pleased to see that you're here and watching it. And Amy and Fliss, hello, thank you. Cool. So we've still got 2 more panelists to get onto the screen. Time's flying away. Keri, do you want to join us?
Hello, everyone. Hiya.
Hiya. So you've been an audience member for this series since we started, really, which is brilliant. So what prompted you to join this panel today?
So we, as of everything, we have mutual contacts, and somebody contacted me and said, would you mind perhaps speaking on the panel about your experiences of mental health and cycling? Out of everyone here so far, I've probably been cycling the least amount of time. I've been on my bike for about 5 years. It's as we've said before, it's been critical of me getting well after quite a serious mental health breakdown 5 years ago. But I fully agree, there's times that was a really tough journey to wellness, really. It wouldn't have been done without my bike, but I would probably admit to saying it wasn't the easiest thing to do either. So I started out running 5 years ago and had quite a lot of injuries. My physiotherapist said, look, actually, if you carry on running, you're just going to end up in a lot of pain repeatedly, and try something else. So my husband was a keen cyclist, and he bought a bike, which I was a little bit annoyed about. It sat in the shed for about a year. And then finally, once I started feeling up for it, I started to go out on women's only rides and started to build my confidence back up. And it's been key through lockdown, really, because I think it's quite mentally tough for everybody at the moment, especially if you're not used to dealing with mental health issues.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of nodding heads going on here. And I just seen in the comments, Nick, I don't know if you want to put this on the screen, that Amy has said she's found that she's had the most open and honest conversations on mental health whilst out on my bike. And actually, we're going to be talking about communication a little bit later on, so do stay tuned. It's really pertinent. Thank you. And our final panelist, bringing on the screen, last but not least, we did get you in the very last minute as well. So I found you on Twitter and I thought, oh, you've definitely got something very interesting to say. You've got a unique specialisation, so please tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. So I'm Josie. I'm a sports psychologist. I work a lot in cycling, partly because it's my passion and I've been riding for the last 15 years. And partly because there's so much need in cycling for psychological help, either to perform brilliantly, because there are so many great tactics you can use from the psychological perspective to do really well, but also because there do tend to be some addiction issues with addiction to cycling, and we tend to be helping people that kind of enjoy it so much that it goes too far and it blocks out other parts of their life. And from an exercise perspective, it is a brilliant way to help your mental health. And I've just finished a book on the psychology of exercise that comes out soon, and that really looks at all of those benefits and some of the barriers, but how can we incorporate more exercise like cycling into what we do to improve our mental health.
Brilliant, thank you. Cool. So as you can see, we've got a varied panel and loads of different experiences. So really grateful to have everyone here. And what I'd quite like to do, which again I did with things like the period panel and menopause, is to try and break down some of those taboos and maybe get talking about some of those harder personal experiences, because I think some of us, everyone here will have had different mental health experiences, and if we get the conversation going, and I also like to encourage the audience to use the chat bar, feel brave, start talking, start sharing your experiences, and then we can realize that the cycling community is a place where we can talk about these things. So if I'm going to share a personal experience first up, where I got fibromyalgia a few years ago. If anyone's not heard of that, it's an illness that affects your muscles. You have muscle pain and your muscles seize up. And I was in a wheelchair for a year, which was very, very shocking for someone who's as active and keen on cycling as I am. And it turned out it was caused by stress. So I didn't know that for a long time. So I spent a year getting passed from pillar to post between hospitals. Once I worked out that it was caused by some stresses going on in my personal life, I could start attacking those as the problem, which then allowed my physical health to get better. So yeah, that's my personal experience, my strongest, I suppose, personal experience that I wanted to share with everybody today. So please, if anyone in the audience would like to share their stories, I really want to encourage this to be an open space. And if anybody would like to tell a story, going to maybe go around the panel. Sarah, starting with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, I guess just to pick out one of the sort of tougher moments when I've been cycling, and is that actually coming back from injury. About sort of 9 years ago, I shattered my collarbone very badly. And before that, I just started doing my first sort of few races, after sort of building up my confidence to actually sort of enter one or two, and was feeling sort of very enthused about it. And then I shattered my collarbone, and the injury was such, and I took such a long time getting back from it and getting back up to fitness, that I think for a long time I started getting a bit dispirited, because when you're doing all those usual things you can, you know how fit you can be, and knowing that there's no shortcuts and no quick route back, it can be very frustrating when, as I found, I was dropping off the back of the steady group with my club on the social club run, or that the hills that seem to be easy to climb up before were now these sort of mountainous rises, and feeling that riding the bike took so much out of me that I was much more exhausted when I got back and back to the house. So I think just because of those no quick fixes, that was something that was very difficult for me to kind of work through, because it was a few years. I had a few complications with the collarbones of not healing quickly, but then I was very glad for the social side of the cycling connections, and that I didn't feel completely kind of isolated with it, so I could get something from it. But I think, yeah, when you can't cycle, or you're just not as fit as you know that you've been in the past, it's quite difficult to be patient, and know that you'll just have to go through all those stages to build yourself back up again.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And again, audience, you're starting to get your stories in as well. Thank you. Talking about people who've survived after being dragged under a lorry in London, and surviving but suffered PTSD, which is pretty heavy stuff. And again, some fear levels of cycling being talked about there, balancing with the elation of cycling, and other people saying that the bike has been their saviour during lockdown and after family breakdown. Somebody else here has said they share the same fear. So fear in cycling is pretty high, and other people using it to deal with work-related stress and anxiety. So I say it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to share these stories and start talking about it, because look, as soon as we do, everyone's like, oh yeah, I've also had a tough moment. Crystal, could you think of a story that you particularly would like to share, sort of start breaking down those barriers for talking?
Yeah, I mean, like when I was on the way home from work in 2018, and a scooter just came out of nowhere, and it was like, and it was a deliberate kind of slow down and then drive straight into me, and then that's the pinnacle moment which kind of sparked this whole fear of going outside. But ever since that has happened, I've always kind of tried to challenge myself just to move forwards, little tiny increments at a time. So like go around the block, like find somewhere really quiet to go cycle. But I think it was last year that I really kind of hit like an epiphany moment, when I was really stressed out in everyday life, and I was just like, I want a holiday. So I literally booked a solo cycling trip to Mallorca. And like the experience of going and cycling out there is so wildly different to here, but it reignited my love for cycling again. So once I came back, I had all the motivation just to try and go out and try and learn a bit more and try and push myself. Because I think the other thing that has really helped me is, even when I'm off the bike, what can I learn to make time on the bike more valuable? So what the times when especially I couldn't get on the bike, couldn't drag myself out of the house, I found that watching cycling tutorials, like on maintenance, on other people's adventures, any kind of inspiring content that I could find, was kind of adding to that flame inside and making me want to go out and explore more. And I think tomorrow is a very, very special day for me as well, because I'm picking up my gravel bike tomorrow, and that for me is so exciting, because it means I can actually go out, not have to worry about being on roads 100% of the time, but explore the wilderness away from traffic. And that is the magic of cycling. You can just escape.
Perfect. I'm like, sold. Where do I sign up? Amazing. Rebecca, it's not always been a smooth ride for you either, your relationship with cycling. Have you got anything that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's really interesting, as you say, to listen to everybody else's anecdotes and where other people have come from. And actually, you and I have discussed this a lot, as you know, not everyone I know, we're very good friends, ex-teammates, and so you've shared a lot of these experiences with me. And I think something that I really want to push the message out on a lot is that you are not the only person in that situation, and that is just something that I've seen so many times in cycling and at so many different levels. I'm not good enough. Is it just me that's being dropped? Am I the only person that feels completely alone in this? But of course we're not, and that's why today is so important. But Anna, I know you're probably alluding to something that happened to me, which was I had a crash off the bike quite a few years ago now, and had quite a lot of complications after it, which led me to being quite ill for about 2 years, actually, with a lot of time in hospital. And what had happened was I'd broken a couple of ribs on my side, and that was quite a clear diagnosis when I went into A&E after the accident. And so it was kind of just, they drew a line under it. You just need to let your bones heal. But what went undetected, I think, was a small puncture and pneumothorax, so a slight collapse of the lung, which actually led to me getting pneumonia quite badly and pleurisy with it as well. So I was having difficulty breathing. I was obviously quite alarmed at the fact that I couldn't breathe. I felt very heavy on my chest the whole time, and it got to the point where I was in quite a serious state in hospital. And that was a very difficult time, because I think it went so long before anybody actually reassured me, actually, you're very unwell, rather than being on your own thinking, well, am I, I don't feel right, but am I maybe imagining how bad this is? And then actually to get that diagnosis that you've not been right for quite a while, is a little bit of a relief to know that actually you've got some answers. And so from then it was quite a long recovery. But for me, it was exactly that. When I got back on the bike, I was trying to rush back to fitness too quickly, looking around. And I know everyone's nodding here, because I think everyone in some form has been in this boat where you put so much pressure on yourself to just get straight back, whether that's going out with your friends or up to a race level, or you have these expectations that you're supposed to just fix overnight and get back in there. And usually it's only been me putting those expectations on myself, but actually having a friend like Anna during that time saying, oh, it's perfectly normal that you might not even be able to do a lap of the velodrome right now. You might not even be able to get out of bed and get on the bike at the moment. So having friends that were constantly reining me in on my own expectations, I think was really important to allow myself to recover. But it's something I really like to talk about now, because I rushed my recovery and I relapsed so many times back into hospital. If I'd given myself that time, I probably would have skimmed months and months off my recovery time.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the physical health, it was just so upsetting and distressing at the time for you and for everyone around you. And I just want to say that I never took the mick out of you for sounding like a little squeaky toy when you were breathing.
Yeah, but honestly, for a really long time, that toy in Toy Story that just makes squeaky noise. I think it's in Toy Story. Every time I would breathe, just sat down normally, you'd hear now it would just go like, and that turned out to be a serious respiratory problem. It wasn't funny at all. Completely undiagnosed as an odd squeak.
And Keri, you alluded to having some pretty heavy times about 5 years ago. Is that something that you'd feel comfortable talking about, or do you skirt around? Up to you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, it's talking about it. It's what helps, isn't it? It's the hardest thing to talk about sometimes. I think with mental health, and particularly with depression, there's the ability that it seems that sometimes for some people it takes away their ability to speak and to communicate, and it's really hard. Particularly, I'm a mum of 3 kids, so you have no choice sometimes. Even when you're struggling, you still have to do your school run. You still have to be presentable. And after I had my breakdown, I had a lot of people say, I didn't know things were so difficult. And I just thought, well, I've just become so good at hiding it. I've just become so good at just picking myself up and carrying on. But when it comes to cycling, the thing I really wanted to talk about what Churchill used to call the black dog, and it's that little voice that exists in everybody's head. And when I started cycling, and even now I'm probably pretty much recovered from that depressive episode, but particularly when I started, because I'd never done any sport before, I used to ride with my club members, with my friends. I know it didn't tell anybody, but there'd be a little voice in my head going, "You're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You know, why are you on a bike? You've never really ridden a bike. You're not going up that hill. Everybody's ahead of you because you're useless. You can't do it." And it took me years of hearing that all the time before I suddenly realised that what I needed to do was stop running from it and turn around and go, "I'm just going to chase you down. I'm going to show you that I can do this and I can do it well." And it's hard to flick that mentality because depression just makes it so hard to get out the door sometimes. But it's so empowering to be on my bike, particularly because I've never done a sport, and to explore all different types of cycling, to go on the velodrome and not be frightened, or to go mountain biking with my kids and not freak out too much. I mean, I'll always enjoy my road cycling more, but in some ways, I'm trying to take that mental health episode and say that actually it could be quite positive, because I have nothing to compare against now. I have no pre-fitness, nothing. I just have the fact that I'm alive, which I could not have been 5 years ago. So every time I'm on my bike, I'm about 110% more alive than I was before. It's listening to that voice, knowing that other people hear it, because every ride I went on, people would say, "Oh, do you know, actually, I sometimes feel the same." And I just thought it was me. I thought it was just me who had that negativity hounding me, but it wasn't. It happens to so many people. We just don't talk about it. You know, it's very hard when you're starting a sport and everybody turns up and they're all lycra clad, and you're sort of standing there going, "I don't know if I fit in here." But now I just go, I'm fine and I'm happy where I am. Seeing all the gains and seeing the progress, it's quite empowering in itself, really.
If that's not an empowering story, I don't know what is. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And also, you touched on that, you know, cycling can maybe look intimidating on the outside, especially to people getting into it. And that's what I'm really hoping through these panels and through a lot of work that Cycling UK are doing, they can break that down. Because once you are in it, and like you say, once you do start talking, you realise that most people have these voices and these fears, at least at some point. But also you touched on something there, that you came out of the depressive episode. And when you're in it, you sometimes can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's worth clinging on because it doesn't have to stay with you forever. And that's, you know, the fact that you overcame that is brilliant and inspiration to lots of people hopefully listening. Josephine, finally, was there anything that you would like to share, maybe from a more personal point of view rather than the sort of general work that you do with clients?
Well, it kind of ties in actually, because I loved what Keri said there about those small wins. And I think cycling is brilliant for giving us little small wins. If it was a day that was really tough to get out the door and you still do that whole route, or I remember I've only done track cycling once, but I will never forget that day because I was so terrified. And I used one of the sports psych techniques we use about kind of having an instructional message you give yourself over and over again. And it worked. And I had the best day of my life. It was magical. And the buzz that you get from that when you achieve something you didn't think you could achieve. And because cycling's so diverse, and just as you could go out on a gravel bike, or you can go on a road bike, or it can be BMX or track, gives you so many opportunities to get those wins, which then release all the great stuff in your brain so you feel fabulous. So I think we're so lucky we've got a sport like this to really help with all those bits.
Yeah, it is a brilliant sport, and I don't think it's big news to anyone to say that cycling and exercise can give a great boost to your mental health. And right now, we're going to look at both sides of the coin, definitely, during this discussion. Right now, we're going to be sitting on the side of the coin where cycling is wonderful. Sometimes, due to mental health, it can be hard to get out and start doing it. And you also said something there about when facing the fear. Me personally, I'm into mountain biking because it scares me. And when you're scared and you're doing something that's that adrenaline fueled, you can't think about whether you finished your tax return or whether some guy has texted you back, or you're just in that moment. All your other thoughts and feelings are out the window. And for me, I get a huge buzz out of switching everything else off. It's like my meditation. But there's some of you in here, Crystal, I'll go over to you, because you're talking about sort of going off a long distance on your gravel, which is kind of different. I imagine that lets you be with your thoughts in a different way as opposed to blocking them out. So what boost do you get from cycling in that capacity?
I think it's just like gratitude and learning to like love what I have. Like what I have in this moment is what's in like enabling me to go out, because deep down I've got a massive drive to learn, to do more things, and this machine that I have is an enabler to let me go out and experience that. It's just the hardest thing is just getting out that door. Like as soon as I'm out that door, everything's better. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. But it's just that foot distance of leaving that door is the hardest part of any ride. But as soon as I'm out, it just gives me the space to like reflect on the positive things, because I think when I'm cycling, I only think about positive things until I see a car that's being really horrible. But that aside, I only think of positive things when I'm on the bike, because it gives me like I'm moving all my muscles, blood's running through my body, the endorphins are going around, and it just gives me a positive spin on any negative thoughts I've got, and makes me like, it enables me to see both sides of an argument, and I'm able to kind of make any kind of decisions with a more balanced view.
So it gives you a bit of perspective as well. And what about, maybe I'll go for a hands up here, if anyone's learned any tricks for getting yourself out that door. You know, when you're with the black dog and you just feel like it's too hard to get out. Keri, what could you pass on to people to really encourage people to go out for a ride?
So I think I have to take my hat off to my spouse, because we follow it. It took me a long time to communicate. He knew things weren't right 5 years ago, and I just couldn't speak to him about it. And when we finally got through that really difficult phase, and I was in sort of a recovery after a few months, there's an agreement of things that he can look out for. And he'll say to me, do you think you need to get on your bike? Do you think you need to get on your bike? And sometimes he'll say, even if I'm training indoors, he'll say, just do half an hour. And it's sometimes breaking into those really small steps. Sometimes the only way to do it is for me to get all my kit ready. And even if I'm in my kit and I don't go out for a few hours, I have no excuse then I have to go out because I'm in my kit. So I've got my kit on, I'm going to go for a ride. I'm not going to take it off until I've had a ride. So that's the small way. And the other thing is, it took me a long time because of the medication that you sometimes get put on. You put on a lot of weight, and I put on a lot of weight on mine. And I learned to change the way I looked at myself. So I would go in front of the mirror and say, you look awful. But now I go, wow, look at your legs. They're really strong. Those legs can get you up those hills. Those legs are really good in the sprint. Those legs are going to get you to your races. Those legs are going to do all these things, rather than criticizing who you are, because you're amazing to be on your bike. You know, your body is capable. So your mind needs to kind of move with it as well.
I love it. Good tips there as well. Just getting your kit ready, getting it on. Rebecca, you put your hand up. Is that because you had something you wanted to add, or just because you were like, me too?
Just no, yeah, I did have something to say, but basically just in massive agreement with that. I actually recently wrote a blog post about exactly this, and the fact that, you know, I think we unanimously agree how much we adore the sport of cycling, and it's a wonderful community, but there are so many people that I know that are in the same boat as me that just have days, perhaps a bit more pre-pandemic, but have days where it just seems like a huge feat to get out the door. And that, again, can be for so many different reasons. And I was writing about how, you know, if it's a little bit further into the winter and you can't find your lights, or you can't find your charger, or you can only find one of the socks you were going to wear, or gloves, or accessories, or actually where did I put my helmet, and you end up just not getting out at all. And I wrote about this, as I say, and so many people came back and said, yes, like if I've got in my mind that I want to wear that particular jersey and I can't find it, everything turns negative and I don't want to go anymore, and I'm fat and I'm slow and I can't do it. And it's that mentality that you can easily get into if your pre-ride routine hasn't gone to plan. So I was just sort of exploring that as something that I've definitely felt myself, and actually thinking, when I'm a little bit more organized and I've maybe packed my stuff to ride to work, or I've prepped everything I want to wear, it honestly puts me in such a good headspace that I have a better ride because of it.
And I was seeing all the hands going up, so everyone's got something they want to chip in with this. So Sarah, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go to you, Josie.
Yeah, I think a bit of pre-ride prep kind of can go a long way, but also being sort of kind enough to yourself that if you don't go out, that's okay, because maybe you're just in the space that's not the day for you to go out on the bike, and it's very difficult sometimes to give yourself that sort of self to reward yourself with that self-compassion. Say that, okay, you can push yourself to a degree, but sometimes actually you can't. You just can't move beyond that block, and maybe it's time to just to have the day off. But I have also been sort of discovering that even if it takes me a long time to get out the front door, and I can sense myself dragging my heels, if I do get out the front door, 9 times out of 10 I'll feel much better. And occasionally I won't. I'll come back with the head just as busy as it was before, but at least then I can say to myself, well, I still got out the front door, and I don't sit at home guilting myself that I haven't, and also making myself mentally exhausted from just all that sort of internal monologue, that the effort of trying to get out, not getting out, and then having not gone out. So yeah, just sort of trying where you can to be kind to yourself and go, maybe today's not the day, maybe today I just stay home, and that's okay every now and again. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I want to go a bit deeper into that in a sec, actually. So let's hear what you wanted to add to the topic, Josie.
Well, there's 2 things I found really help people. So one is actually setting yourself a problem to solve whilst you go out, and not thinking about it whilst you're out there. But our brains are really good at, we think we're thinking about something else and our mind has wandered, but actually it's still working in the background on that problem. And it tends to be, we come back and we've had that fresh air and we've had all that blood go to the right bits of our brain, and we kind of feel like we've solved that problem a bit better. So thinking for a couple of minutes before you go out what you want to solve can be really good for people, and really give you a bit more.
Some examples.
Oh, like it could be a tricky piece I've been working on writing, and I don't really know how to phrase something really well, and I come back and it just seems to slot into place. Or when I used to work in a proper job, and I had teammates, and you worked in a company trying to solve like relationship issues with people about how could I approach something, that seems to slot into place once you've had that space. And the other thing I find really helps is when I've researched how cycling helps our mental health, all of the research studies seem to come down to the fact we need to do only about 20-25 minutes 3 times a week. And so if you can almost see it as a prescription, because once we've gone out for 20 minutes, we tend to stay out longer. But 20 minutes doesn't seem as scary as an hour, or so daunting. But if we've set ourselves a prescription of, okay, for my mental health, I need to do this, this, and this, like I would take my antidepressant, then it can help people feel like there's a real purpose that's scientifically backed. And we tend to do far more once we get out there and really enjoy it.
And that's exactly, actually, one of the audience members, Claire, she's said that you can agree with yourself to go out for 20 minutes, a bit like just what you say. So you're going to go 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back. But when you get to that 10-minute point, you can have a little think, do I want to carry on? Or like Sarah said, sometimes you don't. And then so if at that point you come home, you've achieved at least what you set out to do. So either way, you feel like a winner, which is really good. And sometimes talking about how when the bike, we've lost Sarah for a bit, hopefully she'll just pop back in, it's an internet thing. When the bike doesn't manage to clear your head, for me, so I never struggle with motivation. That's not my problem. My problem is ignoring stresses and ignoring problems. I'm like, oh, I'll just go out for a bike ride, everything's going to be fine. And then my bike can sometimes be my guide that tells me that everything's not all right, and I start riding shakily. I can't get into it. I'm not doing a good job on the bike. When I'm happy, I can ride like a dream. When I'm not, that's when my riding goes to blah, blah, blah. And so it can be my guide. What was my point? I think that was it. So yeah, so I was watching Sarah come back onto the screen. Did you hear what we were saying there? About so you know, going for a ride isn't always the answer. Sometimes you can still feel pretty rough when you go out, but then it tells you to go back home, and I do need to deal with that tax return, or you know, whatever issues, and they're the things that I need to deal with. Rebecca, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if you thought I was just welcoming Sarah back on up, but I wasn't equally doing that.
I'm so pleased to see you back.
I'm aware that I'm looking down a line. It's because I'm reading everyone's comments as they come in. They're absolutely brilliant. I really like the one about visualization as well. I think that's really, really lovely and important to actually remember. And I've said this to you before, Anna, haven't I? You know, you never actually do regret getting out. It's just the procrastination beforehand. But what was my point? I actually wanted to ask Josie a question. We've all touched upon this guilt, and why, in your experience, do we tie so much guilt up with whether we're riding far enough, whether we're getting out the door? Like, why is this so commonly combined?
I think some of it is that one of our kind of key pillars in life is that we want to feel like we belong. Everybody wants to have that connection, that social connectedness with other people. We want to have that sense of belonging. And when we start cycling, there is a real sense of us as cyclists. You're quite likely to describe yourself on Twitter or Instagram as a cyclist because you feel passionately and you love it. That also immediately means we start comparing. And cycling is so easy to compare. We've got Strava that lists how far everyone's gone, how fast they've gone, how many miles they did, how much they enjoyed it, the great photos they took. And it's just constant. It's all the time. And because you love it, you get engaged. But then it's really hard for us as human beings not to compare. And there are things we can do to try and focus more on us and our own achievements. But unless you cut yourself off from all those other things that bring us joy, we are pretty likely to compare, and then comparison ends up bringing guilt.
So I'd like to speak to about maybe more solutions about how the guilt doesn't manifest and we can just reap the benefits. That'd be really good. But again, we're sort of more talking now a little bit about the thing, like I said, on the other side of the coin, where cycling actually adds a pressure into your life. And it can exacerbate a decline of mental health. It's not always the perfect pill to make everything fine. So I feel like we're going into that topic now. Sarah, you had your hand up. Was there something you wanted to say there?
Yeah, I think just in terms of just very much what Josie was saying about sort of comparisons was chiming with me, because a few years ago, I was I'd be doing regular training rides with some club mates who were fitter than me. I was still sort of coming back from that sort of major accident, and I ended up finding myself sort of being quite miserable because I was inevitably at the back of the string, and finding myself struggling and looking at other people, thinking they don't seem, they seem to be fitter, they seem to be managing the riding okay. And it got to the point where even the racing I just didn't enjoy anymore. And I was sort of self-sabotaging by almost sort of dropping off the back as soon as the race started, because I'd already decided that I couldn't keep up with the fastest women. But the way I dealt with it was to stop racing, going, okay, my head's not in it for the moment, so I'm just going to move away. And I ended up going out training solo a lot. And I think that helped because there just was no one else to compare myself with. And also a bit of the, miles of my meditation, just to kind of relax myself and go back to enjoying the cycling for the cycling, rather than thinking about any sort of other aims that I was going out to train to try and win a race.
Excellent. And Keri, you've got a fan in the audience who's proud of you. You're such an inspiration. Not wanting to compare anybody else to Keri, you're all inspirations right now. Yeah.
I was just
thank you for sharing your stories.
On comparisons, though, there's time. So because I was getting fit and have been getting fitter, particularly through winter, I've been starting to go out and ride and become quite competitive with myself, because I'm not a very competitive person with anybody else. And sometimes I've actually just, I'm not going to take my Garmin. I'm going to ride, and I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to ride, because the reasons I ride is because the views are beautiful, because I'm in the middle of nowhere, I can see things. I mean, I went out for a ride a few weeks ago and a beautiful deer was standing in the middle of the road, and I just stood there quietly. And I thought I just wouldn't normally see this. It's just reminding yourself the reasons that you go out and ride, and sometimes taking those metrics away, because you're not a number, you're a person who likes to be on their bike. So constantly measuring yourself just can reiterate that feeling of worthlessness, because if you don't see improvements, you're like, well, I'm training really hard, you know, I'm putting in however many hours a week, why isn't this any better? But actually just taking that one thing away and just saying, I'm not going to measure myself anymore, just for a few rides, you can come back to it, but you can just go, I'm just going to ride my bike because I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was ill previously, actually stopped following people that normally used to inspire me on Instagram, because actually it was just making me feel rubbish. And I came to the conclusion that if it wasn't making me feel good, don't do it. Yeah. Josephine, what did you want to say? And then we'll come to you, Rebecca.
Only that when we're treating someone with exercise addiction, with cycling addiction, those are exactly the things we would suggest. So it's not going out for a ride with your Garmin on. And often people will talk about the huge relief when they realise that they won't know how they've done, but also nobody else will know how they've done or how far they went. And we'll set entirely different goals. The goals won't be around how much you ride or how far you ride or how fast you ride. They will be, how much can you enjoy that ride? How did you find the best flapjack in Surrey to eat as your cafe ride? Can you take a brilliant photo on your ride of something that will make you smile a few days later? And we really set goals that are nothing to do with performance on their bike. They're all about how they make you feel on the bike.
That's some great tips. Thank you. And somebody's also in the comments said lots of chat about club riding and racing, which, yeah, very true. We've got quite experienced panelists here. But what do you think about everyday or commuter riding as a means of maintaining mental health? And that's really important. I mean, we sort of touched on, if you can get out for 20 minutes, no matter what, that would be really good. And you don't think that cycling is all about club riding and racing. And so we will definitely, I think I'm glad that you pulled that up, Amy, because we'll definitely spend a couple more minutes just talking about the non-pro side of it. But before that, Rebecca, you had something you wanted to add there about the comparison.
I just wanted to quickly pick up on that thought that your cycling ability somehow defines you. So, you know, if you hit this magic number and everyone can see it on Strava, you're somehow, you know, more of a respected person in your, you know, in your whole world. And I think something that really resonated with me was I did a big charity ride where we were doing over 100 really hideously hilly miles a day, a really tough ride, and everyone was spread out, you know, loads of people getting dropped off the back, and I was kind of riding through the group with various different people, and I was chatting to everyone on this particularly tough day about what career they did and who they were, everything about what they did off the bike. And I met a brain surgeon, all these people that were just excellent in their field, like the most fascinating people. But I'd seen other riders, and I hope that this happens less and less, looking a little bit judgmental because these particular individuals had fallen off the back of the group and weren't as quick as the next person at climbing. But the moment you actually start talking to them about what they do and when they're not on the bike, you know, their ability up a hill or whether they're slightly slower than someone else does not define their achievements in life. But I think that's something I just wanted to briefly pick up on, because I have felt like, you know, myself and loads of other people have felt like you're not as quick as the next person, or you haven't, you know, completed 100 miles and the next person has, or, you know, you're somehow a lesser person, and it's just so far from how any of us should feel on a bike.
Great. And we've got somebody on the commuter topic again saying that they're riding 5 days a week. That commuting is hard. It is hard. And it doesn't leave much energy for leisure cycling at the weekend, but you've made that decision because it's a good stress reliever at the end of the working day. So has anyone got anything they'd like to add about the pressure of cycling when it's commuting, and it's not to try and fit in with a club or a race. Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I just, although I've been talking about sort of racing, etc. I mean, I started off cycling in London as a commuter. My initial sort of entry point was sort of helping out at a race, but I only actually did the race once when I was sort of convinced to by one of the organisers, and I was overtaken repeatedly by small children. I wasn't good. That wasn't good. But I did start. It started the ball rolling, and I started cycling to work, and it was round trip about 20 miles, and it got me fit very, very quickly, and it was quite a revelation. But this was over sort of 15 years ago, and I look back now and I'm slightly sort of horrified that I was sort of throwing myself down the Camden Road with all the traffic and very few cycling facilities. And there's I think a number of us have touched on kind of fear around cycling, particularly when you're commuting. And I last year I became a trustee of London Cycling Campaign, and I'm sort of more and more passionate about trying to deliver, or being part of the process of delivering good cycle infrastructure. So hopefully we can remove some of that fear that people have, but they can still enjoy getting out on their bikes and feeling the benefits, fitness benefits, and enjoying their surroundings from a non-motorized perspective.
And I think if somebody's feeling particularly fearful about cycling on the roads, and that's negatively affecting their cycling experience, at least there you've got a very specific topic that that you need to tackle. It's not just like a general feeling of dread or unease or anything like that. You're like, I'm frightened about this, and there are actually therefore things that you can do about it. So Sarah's there talking about infrastructure, so you could wait until infrastructure gets put in, or find a route. Cycling UK have got route mapping on their website, so you can actually find your route to work that takes you on quiet roads and cycleways, and you can have cycle instruction lessons as well. So you can have people that can teach you how to ride safely and confidently in traffic, and that's a brilliant way of tackling that one particular fear. And Crystal, you had your hand up. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, like, check your local council, because a lot of councils do offer like free urban cycling training or just general cycling training, which is a really good thing to help people gain confidence and stuff.
Absolutely. And there's two more topics that I want to bring up before we end today, so we're rushing. These panels always seem to go over time. It's because we get so many audience participation as well, which is brilliant. But I just want to bring up the topic of medication. So I think sometimes people can feel that being on medication is a bit of a failure, and they can be wary before even approaching the GP about doing that in the first place. So I guess the best recommendation would be speak first to your GP. Keri, yeah?
Yeah, so to be honest, it's because we have a family history of depression. I wasn't surprised to be on medication. But I remember when I went to my GP and I was really in quite a state when I had my breakdown. And eventually, once I calmed down, I said, I don't want to go on medication. And she very, very quickly put me in my place and said, if you were facing me as a patient and I was diabetic and I told you to go on insulin and you went, oh, I don't know if I really want to, you wouldn't say that. And you've got to, I think I've said to so many people, medication can seem really scary, but they're like the crampons of climbing. You're in a really difficult time, and if someone's offering you the help, it'll get you over that little bump, it'll dig you back out until you feel ready to perhaps try and find different ways to help yourself. So for me, the only agreement when I came off my medication, I made the agreement with my GP that I would ride regularly, because it was my only way of getting enough endorphins to mitigate what I was losing out on. So obviously, go by your GP's advice and be really honest with yourself, because if anybody else was poorly and you said take something to help you, really that's what they're there to do. There's so many different types to try. There's so many different ways that you can use them, but they're there really to help you get out of the deepest pit if you really, really are struggling, and just get you past that dark phase until you can help yourself a bit better.
Absolutely. And if it's stopping you from doing what you love anyway, if your depression or anxiety or stress is stopping you from being able to get out on the bike, then know that medication is a great first step. to encourage you to go further forward. But what I want to ask, is there any side effects that people might want to be aware of that could affect their cycling from medication? Or is generally, yeah, Keri again?
Sorry, yeah. For me, it was weight gain. It was massive.
Yeah.
Huge problem with weight gain. And there was nothing I could do to lose it. I got quite distressed about it at one point, but I just figured, I spoke to my GP and she said, to be honest, for this point, I just know that you're alive and you're doing okay. The weight will come off. It will come off eventually, but just try and keep on working on ways that help you to feel better about the whole situation. But it is really tricky because life is not forgiving. And, you know, there's nothing more uncomfortable than the fact that you can't get up a hill, and it's not your fitness, it's the fact that gravity's pulling you back down. But, yeah, that was for me the only thing that was a side effect. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, that's a good one to bring up, because especially within the cycling community as well, there can be a little bit of an obsession about weight, which isn't always healthy. So just being aware of that and knowing that it's part and parcel of it. And like you say, you're alive and doing what you love, and that's the most important thing. And I'm aware that I'm rushing a little bit, but I want to talk about communication, because that's so important, and it's what we're stepping out and doing right now. And some people have said in the comments, and also been brought up in the chat, that it can be quite easier to sometimes talk about mental health when you're riding a bike. But sometimes maybe if you're in a club, or you've got your group, not necessarily a club, but the people that you normally go ride with, if you're having a bad day, what sort of experiences have our panelists had where they've wanted to bring up the topic of mental health with their usual cycling buddies? Is this something that you find is approachable, and has it been for you? Yeah, Sarah?
Well, I suppose from the sort of the opposite side, that a few years ago I wrote a piece for Cycling Weekly where I touched on my experiences with cycling depression, and I was amazed actually how many of my club mates then sort of came up to me quietly and said, "Oh, you know, that was really interesting. I've had some similar sort of issues with that." People that I'd never guessed myself would have. So I think it's, you know, just having these kind of open conversations, it does help. But I think, from my personal experience, because I've sort of written a lot about it over the last few years, I'm sort of used to sort of speaking about it. There's not quite such an issue for me. And also having worked among sort of psychologists and therapists in my last sort of job, it's become normalized, and I realize that that's not everyone's experience. But it might be a question of just sort of alluding to things and just going, "Oh no, having a really kind of crappy day, the head's not here." But I suppose with a lot of the people that I interact with, they kind of know what I'm saying. Aside from that, they might know that there's actually more to say, but I suppose I leave some of the most explicit stuff for my sort of particularly good friends, or ironically the blog.
Yeah, cool. Anyone else had any experiences, positive or negative, trying to talk about mental health within their cycling community, but they're in their own little bubble? Mention anything? Yeah, Keri?
Sorry, when I was really struggling, actually, I would be quite upfront, and I still am with my cycling friends, my close cycling friends. I will say, anybody free for a ride, I'm not talking much. And that's it. Because I'm naturally quite introverted, so I'm not always most engaging in that cycle. But it's comforting to be with people you ride with, and you can be quiet, and they can do all the talking for me. That's fine, but I'll just go, "Look, I'm just quiet today. I just need the headspace." And it makes people feel a bit more, they don't worry about you as much. They feel comfortable to go, "Okay, that person's in that space. That's absolutely fine." Because I don't want to come across as being rude. I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to internalize and cope with a lot of things that are going on at the same time.
Yeah, Rena. And actually, the only person without their hand up, but I wanted to speak to Crystal, because the reason I discovered you in the first place was you shared a beautiful post about opening up with your other half, and how the two of you had been thinking one thing about the other, and because you hadn't talked about it, you'd made assumptions. And you posted this in the Valley Vixen group chat, and it just exploded because it resonated with so many people. So I just wondered if you could share that story.
Yeah, so I, ever since like that time, I've struggled with cycling alone and struggled with finding a group to cycle with as well within my distance of my house. And it just stopped me going out when I wanted to, and I really wanted someone else to cycle with. And I always find it easier to talk to either a computer or a community of people within like the area what I'm interested in, like a cycling community and stuff like that. So instead of typically talking to my other half, I talk to the internet. And just over Christmas, I felt really depressed and alone. And it got to Boxing Day, and we both went to a coffee shop just to chat. And that's when I opened my floodgates, really, and just say that, look, this is how I feel. I really wanted to go for a ride on Christmas Day, like really wanted to, but there was no one I could ride with. So I felt really, really down and depressed because of that. And then he just opened up his opinions and just said, like, I never knew this about you, and I really want to get involved. I want to share memories with you. It's not necessarily the cycling that I don't want to get into. It's I want to spend time with you. So any way that I can spend more time with you, I'm happy to do that. So as soon as we had that discussion, we rushed around and found him some bikes to go cycling on. And what the interesting thing that's come from that is he's got a kind of more preference towards off-road riding and mountain biking, gravel riding. And that's kind of influenced my style a bit more. So like I now want to ride on gravel rides, on mountain bike rides and stuff, so we can spend more time together. So it's the more comfortable place for us both to sit. And I just think without that opening up over Christmas, this would never have happened. So taking the time to speak to the people that you really care about how you're feeling, they care about you. They want to help you any way you can. You just got to open those doors.
Thanks. Right, let's all just take a moment and we'll wrap this up. Everyone got tissues there. And just obviously, if anyone is struggling with mental health issues, please don't hesitate to go to your GP and talk about it seriously. And mental health actually can affect men in a really big way. And I know that this series is aimed at women, but I'm hoping that some of the guys have tuned in and got something from it. And maybe there's a little bit of a responsibility of women here, where we are in a society where women are still allowed to talk more about their emotions than men are encouraged to. So maybe us as a group can look around at some of our male cycling buddies, and if you spot anything, try and encourage them to talk about it, because it's still in today's society not as easy for men as it is for women. And I just want to point out the Samaritans number as well. If anybody is really, really struggling, you can always give the Samaritans a call. Their number is 116 123, and it's a free phone and it's open 24/7. So thank you again for our panelists. You've been brilliant. It's been such a good topic, and also for the audience, you've been brilliant with your comments as well. I've loved seeing them coming in. It's been a little bit distracting, but perfect. I wouldn't have it any other way. As we wrap this up, could we one by one pick out a comment that you'd like to highlight on the screen, or if you see that somebody's asked a question that you felt didn't get answered and you'd like to answer it? Could you just have a little look through the live comments, and one by one we'll go through them just before we say goodbye. So is anybody ready there with their comment to say goodbye with? Rebecca, yeah?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to have a scroll here, but I picked up on the comment about the fact that this rider rides 5 days a week, commutes to work and back, and actually it's hard and doesn't always feel like doing the leisure cycling at the weekend. And as I say, sorry, I can't find the comment again now, but
it's on the screen now.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, Katrina, I think it's a really important one to pick up on, and not necessarily just from a mental health point of view, but actually physically. I think something a lot of people do is ignore how tough it is actually, even if you perceive your commute to not be the longest in miles. Doing that day in, day out takes so much out of you as much as it brings you positivity. So I think it's about acknowledging the physical effects of doing that. You might need to snack a bit more, you might need to rest a bit more, and actually just acknowledge that that's quite a workload for the week as well. So I think it's brilliant to acknowledge that, and not in any way feel that pressure that you have to then go and do big miles on the weekend, because I used to commute every day and it was certainly enough for me.
Excellent, thank you. Who's next? Josephine?
I love Claire Reid's comment on comparison is the thief of joy, because it absolutely is. And something I really love recommending is having a cycling diary and writing down how each ride has made you feel, or something you loved about it, or how you noticed you were a strength you might have had. And that helps you kind of want to go back out the next time. So it really helps you feel a bit more secure in your cycling and enjoy it, and focus on you and what you can do, and not on what everybody else is up to.
Make it all about you. Great. Crystal, has anything caught your eye that you'd like to pull up?
Alex Bramford is talking about the holistic approach to cycling, and I think that's the key for me. Just enjoy when I'm out on two wheels. I'm not focused on average speed or like how fast I go, how far I go, but that actual event that I'm going out, I want to make it an adventure and enjoy it. I don't want to have to look back and be like, oh, I didn't go fast enough or whatever. It's the calming effect of cycling.
Thanks. And Sarah?
Oh, just to add to that, Eileen Mulholland's comment about, I tried to visualize how good I felt the last time I was out. I go and check out a photo that I took on a nice ride. I'm a big fan of stopping and taking pictures. And I take more when I'm feeling better on the bike. But then I can look back and I can just give myself that jog, that little memory of actually, gosh, that was a really good ride. I really enjoyed it, and try and recapture some of those emotions. So my advice would be, stop and take pictures.
And Eileen's got a beautiful picture there on her profile as well, next to it looks like a canal or something, just the open road stretching out in front. Beautiful. And Keri, you have to sift through all the fan mail there.
I just want to point out that some of those belong to my siblings. We're meeting up next year in France, and we are going to go on a bike ride, all three of us, for the first time in our lives. So I can't wait. It'll be good. But actually, I want to pick up on Joseph Mackay Christie, and they said one thing I found so mentally positive about biking is going out with the kids. Obviously, not everybody has children, but I think particularly at the moment we're in a really tough time for our kids. And I think I've always tried to be really honest with them and say, I'm not feeling well today in my head. It's okay. It's okay, because you may have days where you don't feel well as well. So we just try and gently encourage them as well to come out with us if we're going out anywhere. We're all a bit lockdown frenzied at the moment. So it's just being as open as we can with our kids, not keeping it a hidden illness, because it doesn't need to be. If we keep talking and normalise it, then when they struggle, perhaps in the future, they might come to us and say, look, I need some help.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to pick out this last question here from Matt, who bought his wife a bike a few years ago, but she can't get over her fear of falling off. Is there anything she can do to help this? So I would recommend definitely don't try and start on the roads. Get yourself away from traffic, maybe into a nice green space. Think about the fact that if your fear of falling, you might also have a fear of other people seeing you fall. So maybe you don't want to be in a big public space surrounded by loads of people. So pick an area that's conducive to confidence, and potentially book in a cycling instructor as well. So cycling instructors will teach from all levels. Literally, I think when I was a cycling instructor when I was at uni, and I once taught a 73-year-old how to ride a bike. She had never ridden before, but her knees were starting to give way and she wanted to ride a bike, and she managed it. So cycling instructors would be my advice there. Right, that's it. We're well over time, well over, but thank you so much. I keep saying it, but it's been awesome. We've covered so many things. If anybody wants to get in touch with our panelists today, go and find out a little bit more about them. And you could also, maybe our panelists might want to have a look at some of the questions, and you can also reply individually in your own time if you fancy it. And so that's it from Bants, Bikes and Being Female today. Don't forget, tomorrow we're kicking off the Women's Festival of Cycling. So there's just going to be more content coming from Cycling UK, which is a charity dedicated and committed to the UK cyclists, making us all cycle safer, more enjoyably and more easily. Until next week, well, actually, until the next few days, because we've got so much going on, it's bye from me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.